Hey guys, this is Mason, WRKF394 or N5LSN over on the ham side. Just want to make a little video here showing how to do some basic programming on some radios, help get you guys up on the repeaters, show how to import some data, download data, and just do some basic tasks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with this BTEC UV5X3, which is basically just your run-of-the-mill Baofeng, and you will have to excuse the fact that it looks like it's been run over by a truck, because it quite literally has, but it still works good enough for a programming demonstration, so that's what I'm going to use it for. I have it plugged in, and it's in the programming cable right now, already plugged into the computer, turned on, ready to go. We're going to start with CHIRP here. There is a programming software on the website for BTEC that you can download that's intended to be used with this radio, but CHIRP is a free programming software that works with a lot of different radios. This is their website right here that shows all the different radios they currently support. It's nice because CHIRP is usually simpler to use and just in general works better for a lot of the radios that are out there. Some of the programming softwares that the manufacturers put out can be kind of difficult to use, so a lot of people like to use CHIRP instead, myself included. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said, it's already plugged in and turned on. We want to, anytime you're programming a radio, the first thing you want to do, any programming software, any radio, always save what's on it first. Download what is on it, save it to a file. That way, if you mess something up or anything happens, you have a backup. So we're going to start by going up here to radio, and we're going to download. And it will ask you for the COM port that the radio is attached to. Usually, you're only going to have one of these for whatever programming cable you have plugged in. I have two because I have two cables plugged in right now, but never mind that. This is the one that it's plugged into. You're going to tell it what the manufacturer of the radio is and what model it is. I already have BTEC 5X3 selected because that's what my radio is. I'm going to click OK to download it. Okay, so we've just downloaded the data that was already programmed into the radio. Let's say that it just comes with this one channel from the factory. So the first thing we want to do is save this as a backup. So we'll come up here to File, click Save, and we'll just save it right here. So we've saved that as a backup. Now we can go ahead and start adding whatever it is that we want to in here. And we'll start by adding one GMRS repeater. So to show you what programming a repeater looks like, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up our website and I'm going to find my repeater listing, which is right here under the repeaters tab. Now I'm going to look at the CAS 700 system, which is my system in Central Arkansas, and all the information we need is right here at the top. That is what we need to program. So we have a 462-700 for the output frequency and a 467-700 for the input frequency of the repeater. Now you'll notice that 462 and 467 are exactly 5 megahertz apart from each other. That means that this repeater has a positive 5 megahertz offset. So if you program your radio for 462-700 with a positive 5 megahertz offset, that means whenever you hold down the push-to-talk button on the radio, it is going to jump up 5 megahertz, positive 5 megahertz, to the input frequency of the repeater. Now, if this was just a Simplex channel, you wouldn't have an offset. It would transmit and receive on 462-700, which is the Simplex channel 21. But since this is a repeater, it is a duplex machine, and you have to have an output and an input. We also have our CTCSS tone here, also known as PL tone, of a 141.3. So we have that information. We'll come back over here to CHIRP, and we're going to start with our frequency, which is 462.7, and it'll auto-populate the rest of the fields there. Now you can name it whatever you want, this doesn't matter. I'm just going to type in CAS 700 if I can figure out how to work my keyboard. Tone mode. Now, here is something that a lot of people get confused. There is tone, tone squelch, DTCS, and cross. We're not going to worry about cross right now. We have tone, tone squelch, and DTCS. So you have two basic methods of coded squelch. You have analog coded squelch, which is CTCSS, and you have digital coded squelch, which is DTCS. Now, if you look right here, this repeater system uses an analog CTCSS tone of 141.3. So we don't need to worry about digital, but how do we know whether we use tone or tone squelch? Now, the difference between tone and tone squelch is how your radio is going to operate when it is on this memory channel right here that you are programming. If you just set it for tone, then it's going to let you fill out this field right here, and you'd set it for 141.3, which is for the repeater that we are programming in. So what this means is that whenever you press the push to talk on your radio and it transmits to the repeater, it is going to transmit your audio with this 141.3 tone. And that is what's required for the repeater to activate and rebroadcast your transmission. It requires this PL tone to be on whatever transmission it's receiving. Now, tone squelch means that your radio will also have the same PL tone set for its receiving end. So the repeater will only listen to transmissions that have this tone active. The repeater also outputs its transmission with the same PL tone. So you can tell your radio the same thing the repeater does. You can say, radio, I only want you on this memory channel to listen to things that have this PL tone, which basically lets you filter out everything on that channel or on that frequency that is not coming from the repeater. It will only, your radio will only play things out of the speaker that have this matching PL tone. Generally, a GMRS repeater, if it has an input tone, which is right here, then it's also going to have an output tone. Now, I don't specify right here on the website because it uses the same one for both, but the CAS 700 and most other repeaters will output the same tone. So you can safely, instead of using the tone mode, which is only sending the tone, you can use tone squelch, which will, again, send the tone and receive it. So now that I set it to tone squelch mode, it has moved this over to the tone squelch column, so we can set that tone here, 141.3. Now, we're not using DTCS, so we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about receive DTCS. We don't have to worry about DTCS polarity. We don't have to worry about cross mode either, but duplex is something that we have to worry about. Now remember I said that a repeater is a duplex radio. So that means that it receives and transmits at the same time, and it does that on two different frequencies. Now, since we were talking about this being a positive offset right here, that means that we're going to use a positive duplex right here in this duplex column. So you will set the plus for your duplex. And then it's going to ask you for the offset frequency, which we said was 5 megahertz. Now you can just do 5, you can do 5.0, whatever you want here. But you type that in, and now we have a positive 5 megahertz offset, which is what's required to get into any GMRS repeater. All GMRS repeaters will be a positive 5 megahertz offset explicitly. That is just how all GMRS repeaters will be. Mode is another important one. This right here says NFM, which stands for narrow FM. Now we want wide FM. All of our GMRS stuff is going to be set to wide. All of the repeaters you're using are going to be set to wide too, which means that if you are sending narrow audio to a wide repeater, your audio is going to be really low, transmissions are going to be weak, and all in all, it's going to have a pretty poor performance. So we're going to go ahead and change that to FM, which is the standard wide FM. This is your channel skip for scanning and stuff like that, your power level if you want your radio to transmit high or low. You can also right click here and open properties, and it'll show you all the stuff in this nice little box, but you can already do everything from this one screen right here. So now that we've programmed this repeater, let's say that that's all we want to do is just program this one repeater. We can come back up here to radio, upload to radio, and it already knows what radio we're using because we downloaded the data from it with those settings, and it won't let you upload that data to an incompatible radio. So we can just click OK right here, and there we go. Now we're cloning to the radio. Okay, now we've just programmed our first GMRS repeater. This is now what's in the radio. Now you can do this to add more. I'll go ahead and show how to add a simplex channel, just so that way we can see the differences between a repeater and a simplex channel. So if we look at channel 21 right here, it's 462,700. That's the same frequency as the repeater that we just programmed in. But we can still add that as a simplex channel that will go around the repeater. It won't actually make use of this repeater. So we can add 462.7, and we can call this GMRS 21. Tone mode, you just leave that off unless you want to filter out any radios that are not using a specific tone, or if you need to encode a tone. But for simplex channel, generally you would just leave this off. There's no DTCS, no duplex, no offset. Make sure this is set to wide, not narrow, because this is a GMRS channel. We want wideband, and then set your power level. So it's pretty simple just to add your simplex channels. Now with CHIRP, you can also get to the settings of the radio. Here are the settings for this radio that I have plugged in right here. Now, there's a bunch of things in here, and this stuff will change depending on what radio you're programming. You got your squelch, your battery saver, Vox, timeout, beep, all this kind of stuff. For our repeaters, what we like to do is make sure a couple things are changed. There's a lot of settings in here, so I'm not going to go through all of them because it would take too long. But right here, if you look, you see Roger beep. That is the beep that you hear whenever you let go of your push-to-talk. Now for repeaters, we like to keep this turned off because repeaters already have their own courtesy tone, which some people call Roger beep, that signifies whenever someone's done talking. So that means that the Roger beep that's built into your radio is not useful because the repeater already beeps to let you know when someone's done talking. So if you have this turned on, you just get a whole bunch of extra beeps, and usually the ones built into these radios are way too loud anyways, so they're kind of annoying. So we turn these off. Make sure that anything that says push to talk ID is turned off. This right here says when to send push to talk ID. See, that's turned off. We want to make sure that it's not set for any of this, or else it's going to send off a whole bunch of beeps and boops every time you talk. Now for a lot of these Baofeng or BTEC or Radioddity or any of these types of radios, we usually like to turn off the battery saver too. We've seen some issues with battery saver being turned on. So if you're having some receive issues, you can try turning off this battery saver function right here and see if that helps. Now we actually have an import file for CHIRP that has all of these repeaters already programmed into it. And you can get that from the members section of the Arkansas GMRS Repeater Group website. Now to import that data, go ahead and go back to our Baofeng radio, and we're just going to delete everything that's in it right now because all I want in there is the stuff from the repeater group anyways. So to import the data, we're going to open the file that we downloaded from the repeater group website, and that's going to be this right here, Arc Radio CHIRP Memories. We open this file, and it'll open in a new tab. So to import these, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the top one, scroll all the way down, hold down Shift, click on the bottom one. I'll select all. We're going to go to Edit, and we're going to copy them. We'll come back over here to the radio that we're programming. And depending on if you have anything in here or not will depend on where you click right now. So I don't have anything in here. I want to start at memory slot 0, so I'll click here, go to Edit, and Paste. And that will paste everything that we had copied starting at memory slot 0. Now if you had some stuff in here, like let's say that you already had these frequencies in, and you want to paste in the stuff that you copied starting right here. You can do that too. Edit, paste, and there's that. CHIRP is really good for copying and pasting a lot of things. You can delete everything. I hit the wrong button, so disregard that. Just delete everything out of there again. Now let's say that you don't want the FRS frequencies, or you don't want the GMRS simplex frequencies. You just come right here, select the repeaters, and do the same thing. You don't have to copy all of them if you don't want to. And we will paste those in. And that's how you're going to import your data into CHIRP from our file. I also have here a Radioddity GM30, which is not a CHIRP compatible radio yet at the time of making this video. This radio comes pre-programmed with GMRS frequencies and some DIY repeater channels and pre-programmed repeater channels and stuff like that. And sometimes that can be confusing. So we're going to plug this one into the computer and get it pulled up as well. Okay, I've got my GM30 plugged in, and I've got the manufacturer provided programming software right here, which is not as nice as CHIRP is, but we can still do what we need to do in here. Now you'll see that this radio comes pre-programmed with channels 1 through 22, and you also have repeater channels 1 through 8. You've got DIY channels here through 24, and you might be wondering what in the world you're supposed to do with any of this stuff. And there's a couple of different ways you could do it. This specific radio, you'll see that these frequencies right here are grayed out, so you can't actually just change these frequencies to whatever you want. So we'll go back to our example of programming in CAS 700. Now we know that it operates on this frequency right here, which is 462,700 with a transmit frequency of 467,700. Now this radio calls that repeater channel 7. We can change this name to whatever we want, so I will change it to CAS 700. And then we'll come right here to our receive QT and DQT. Now that's a little bit confusing because it doesn't necessarily say anything about squelch, but that's what they're meaning right here. QT and DQT are analog and digital squelch. So we're going to find our analog code for 141.3. And that is for the receive end. This is just like tone squelch instead of tone mode on the BTEC radio that we programmed a minute ago. This one's not as important as this one is. The transmit tone is the one that you really want. Now it appears that whenever I put that in, it went ahead and pre-filled out the transmit tone too. So that's fine. Wide versus narrow. Of course we want this wide because this is GMRS and everything is always wide. High power, because we like high power. Push to talk ID, I'm going to make sure that's turned off. Busy channel lockout, this basically means that if the radio is receiving something, it won't let you transmit. So you can determine yourself whether you want that on and off. This is whether or not it will scan this channel. We're going to leave that as yes. Signal is 1, going to be completely honest. I'm not sure what this means. And I can't right click for help either, so I'm going to leave it at the default. Frequency hopping code, I've never messed with that before, so I'm going to leave that alone too. We can go ahead and go over here and take a look at general settings. We've got logos, channel mode, DTMF side tone. That's already off, that's good. There's a battery saver turned on. Remember, we might need to turn that off if we experience some receive issues. And you can play around with all these settings. Oh, here we go. Roger beep. Want to make sure that's turned off since we're on repeaters and we don't need the Roger beep. And that looks like all the settings that we need for this GM30. And we can go ahead and come up here and click right and click OK and program it to our radio. Okay, well hopefully that shows you how to do some basic programming on your radios and get your repeaters programmed into them. It's certainly easier to do this on a computer if you have access to the programming cables for the radio that you're using, but you can always do this stuff manually from the keypad of the radio itself. So be sure and check out the website that we have over at arcradio.net for the Arkansas GMRS repeater group. and comment if you have any questions, and hopefully this helps.